The goal for today is to help you get the most out of Protomatrix as quickly as possible. This introduction webinar is intended to showcase the 20% of features that will give you 80% of the benefit in order to become more effective at prioritization your tasks and emails. My name is Hai Nguyen. I'm co-founder of Affluence, the company behind Protomatrix. I've talked to thousands of customers over the years. I've seen almost every single use case imaginable. So I'm here to answer any questions that you may have. My goals, to help you understand the basics of Protomatrix, that's most important here, so then you can get started with the software right away, and then to help you become more effective and efficient at prioritizing your task, projects, and emails. There's no question that every single person here today, struggle in some ways with having just too many things on our plate and too many emails that's coming in, too many projects, too many responsibilities. And it's possible to actually bring all of that together and use a platform like Protomatrix to help you become more efficient and more effective at just getting the bigger picture. And hopefully you'll get some vision of what success would be like with Protomatrix, and then learn 20% of the features that will give you 80% of the benefits. Now, when you use Protomatrix correctly, it can cover every aspect of project management, task management, and so forth. But at the end of the day, the most important thing for you to get out of today's webinar is how to get started right away, so then you feel better around understanding what it is you need to work on. And so hopefully you'll get some good insight and implement it right away. Lastly, I want to share some tips and tricks that I think is particularly effective, especially given whatever roles it is that you have. So why do you even prioritize? There's 3 reasons customers come to Protomatrix. 1, to become better at keeping track on the status of work across many areas of responsibilities. The second is to create alignment across team members so everyone knows what's important. And then thirdly, to take back controls of emails and meeting. And one of the things I want to bring up is what happens when we don't prioritize, because for many of you here today, you'll go and you'll learn about the stuff that we talk about in Protomatrix. Afterwards, you'll implement some of these things. But then what happens when you don't implement? Imagine if you sign up for the software, you attend this webinar, and then right after this call is over, you kind of just let it be. And some of you will do that. And so there's no question. So then my question to those people is, what happens when you don't prioritize is that you start losing sight on what's important and you end up working on the wrong things, or you feel busy but you're not meeting your goals, or you're completely overwhelmed by emails and meetings. And that last point, I think, hits particularly close to home for many, many people, because sometimes we're so busy and we're too busy to prioritize. And it is absolutely ironic that it's something that happens to so many of us. The reality is, at the end of the day, it's not about the software, and I'll be the first to admit it. Using Protomatrix, I'm sure there's 1,000 other software you've looked at or you've seen or other people will use. And what happens is it's not about the software at all. It's about us committing ourselves to actually prioritizing our task. All Protomatrix does is make it a little bit easier to focus on that prioritization aspect and be able to communicate that to your team members. So Protomatrix is a comprehensive email, priority, and project management software. All of those bring together into one platform. And it helps at 3 different levels. At the individual level, it helps you prioritize your most important tasks and emails. And in my opinion, that's the most important thing about our software. It is helping the individual, you in all of this, because if you're able to be in control of your work, then everything else will fall into place. But what happens is that if you use Protomatrix well as an individual, then you can actually share your priorities and be able to communicate to everybody else and help the entire team stay aligned on key projects and key tasks. And then lastly, as the team uses Protomatrix more, it helps the organization create a single source of truth to become more efficient and effective. And what I mean by single source of truth, it means that there's one place where everyone can go to and take a look and see what everyone's priorities are. That's it. That's the goal of Protomatrix, which is to create that alignment. And then we have a history of all the changes so that someone else can take over the responsibilities if needed. So hopefully you're thinking about this with respect to Protomatrix, that how it would help you and then how it helps your team and how it could help your organization. So Protomatrix, what makes it better? First, it's the only Microsoft 365 security certified solution across Teams, web, and Outlook at the same time. We're deeply integrated into the Microsoft ecosystem. Now, you don't need to use Office 365 to use Protomatrix because we're completely independent. But if you do use the Microsoft ecosystem, we're probably the most integrated solution for task and project management. And not only that, we work with Teams, Outlook, as well as Copilot, which is actually being announced this week by Microsoft. So what happens is you can use Protomatrix with Microsoft AI to bring it all together as well. So what I want to mention there is that, in some ways, using Protomatrix is future-proofing your ability to prioritize your tasks as well, helping your organization be a little bit more successful. And then thirdly, Protomatrix really focuses on prioritization, hence the name. So, we're not task management. I don't want you to perceive the software as a way to manage tasks. Instead, look at Protomatrix as a way to track what it is that you need to work on, given the whole spectrum of all the things you could work on, right? And so when you start your day and you look at Protomatrix, you should be able to see these are the things that are important and urgent. These are the things where I need to spend my time. And these are the things that I should de-emphasize and put in the back burner. And then fourthly, Protomatrix provide some elements of what I call people-centric collaboration. So it's not just about projects, right? If you use a lot of project management software already or task management software already, you're going through the checklist. And so that's not the point. There's so much more to how we should manage our time than to go down a checklist. Instead, we should look at what are the responsibilities we have for these individuals, for our managers, for our direct reports. If you just need a checklist, honestly, you can use any software. In fact, most people don't even need a piece of software. You have a bunch of sticky notes and that's good enough. But if you're challenged by having too much to do and being able to understand and need to understand where to put your resources, that's where Protomatrix, I think, is more effective. And then lastly, Protomatrix is available as a SaaS solution, but also we have a HIPAA compliant solution for healthcare and life sciences, as well as an Azure government cloud solution for state and local governments. And of course, manage as private Azure deployments for anybody, any organization that have specific needs. The reason Protomatrix is effective, in my opinion, is that it just serves as the single place for everyone can go to know what needs to be done. And so what needs to be done now, what needs to be done later, and what needs to be delegated. So let's talk about the philosophy behind Protomatrix. So there's a famous quote attributed to former President Eisenhower: "What is important is seldom urgent, and what is urgent is seldom important." Now, what I really like about this quote is that it makes you pause a little bit and think about, whatever it is that you're working on, right? Is it urgent or is it important? And sometimes it's that last email that comes in that ends up being the first email you respond to, right? That's the last in, first out mentality that a lot of us kind of work with, because whoever pings you the most get the attention. Whoever sends you the last email get the first response. And so instead, what we really should look at is always stepping back and say, wait a minute, am I working on the most important thing right now? And so being able to push those emails, those urgent things aside, and be conscious about what it is that we're working on, how we're spending our time, is the single most important thing that we can do. So there's a powerful concept called the Eisenhower matrix that is derived from that quote in particular, which is categorizing your task into 4 quadrants. So instead of actually thinking about tasks from a list standpoint, you look at from the dimensions of importance and urgency. So do this exercise, after this call, take out a piece of paper, start writing down the 15, 20 things you have to do, and then start bucketizing them into the specific quadrants. What are the things that are important and urgent? What are the things that's important but not urgent? What are the things that's urgent but not important? And what's everything else, right? And one thing you'll realize, the difference between your checklist and your matrix is that if you were to actually just start fresh and you look at this at the start of your day you should be focusing on the things that's in quadrant one, the important and the urgent, right? Instead of the things that are urgent and important. And so being able to see that consciously is really, really helpful. And the other thing you'll notice is that it's actually quite hard to make those decisions of prioritization. To me, honestly, I think that's the hardest part. I have 1,000 things I want to do, and and of course, I have limited time and resources to do them. So I always have to pick and choose where to spend my time. So I can always just go down the rabbit hole and work on something, but recognizing that it's not important is so crucial in how I think about my time allocation. So with that in mind, what happens then is that the Eisenhower matrix simply is a visualization of the tasks that you have. And you can think of the things that are important and urgent as the do now. That's what you should be working on. The things that are important but not urgent are the things that are in the plan quadrant. That means these are the things you should be thinking about and work on next. And then the things that are urgent but not important, perhaps you could delegate to somebody else, or delegate to an external party or something like that. And then lastly, you should not have a single thing that's not important and not urgent. Instead, you could look at the quadrant 4 as your inbox. This is where you put down, new ideas or new things that you need to evaluate, and you don't know where it fits within the bigger picture. And so it starts there in the bottom right. So this is the Eisenhower matrix, and this is the concept that you'll see over and over again when you use our software, Party Matrix. So when you use Party Matrix, everything that you do fits within the matrix format here. Now, I want to emphasize again that the 4 quadrant Eisenhower matrix create alignment because it forces you to prioritize from the beginning. When you do this particular exercise, you're going to realize how hard it is to actually pick and choose from the list of all the things that we can do. But here's where the magic happens. When you've done your Party Matrix, ask your coworkers to do the exact same exercise and then sit together and compare notes. Imagine if you could see your manager's Party Matrix, then your coworkers' Party Matrix, and your direct reports Party Matrix, or your client's Party Matrix, right? Or your spouse's Party Matrix. Just think of it from that perspective for a second, which is being able to compare notes and then seeing what they consider to be priorities compared to yours. Do you think there will always be alignment? And what happens is if you see constant alignment and you never disagree on anything, you don't need our software, honestly. It means you've got everything under control. But I almost will guarantee you that you will see some misalignment. And what happens is that most of those those misalignments are subtle, right? And we just ignore them. And so you can end up working so hard on a task that no one cares about. And then vice versa, if you're the manager and you have a series of tasks that are important, but your direct report is going down some rabbit hole working on things that don't have an impact on the overall goals. And that happens all the time because we don't have that communication. And so success from using Party Matrix isn't about finding what everyone agrees on. That's the easy part. It's discovering disagreements on what should be a priority when it isn't. So I want you to keep that in the back of your mind as you use Party Matrix. The moment you have a disagreement, that means you're using Party Matrix correctly. So now I have a couple of tips before I jump into the actual demo of the product, because I want to share this with you, and hopefully you'll remember this and you'll think about this when I'm actually showing you the product. So these are the tips to shortcut your success. And so 1, if you're a manager, make sure that you create a project for your team and team staff meetings and screen share during the meetings. That's it. If you do that every single week or every 2 weeks, when you have your staff meeting and you're just sharing the Party Matrix on the screen, everyone can look at it and discuss the priority level and see whether or not you are in agreement or not. If you do that, I guarantee that you will find some really, really interesting insight. And not only that, you can focus your attention on the most important task. If you're managing multiple sites, such as, let's just say, if you're overseeing multiple facilities and each of those facilities have their own series of tasks, create a project for each of those facilities and then invite the manager for each of those facilities into those projects. So now when you log into Party Matrix, you'll see your list of facilities or sites or location or initiatives. And then within each of those, you can click down and drill down on them and see exactly what the priorities are for each of those locations. If you're implementing some specific training program or initiative, then create a project and then turn that into a template to follow those guidelines. So for example, if you have a 30, 60, 90-day plan for all your managers, right? That's a very, very specific request. Or if you're in planning and you need to do a lot of SWOT analysis, so it's strength, weakness, opportunity, threats, right? Then what happens is you should use a specific project for each of those initiatives. If you're a business owner, create a project for each of your departments. It's actually very, very straightforward. What happens is that, business owners just have too many things on their plate. And so what you start losing track of all of those things. And so, if you just have a notebook and you're just jotting things down, that takes it out of your brain and puts on a piece of paper, but there is no sense and reason. There's no organization, and there's no ability to track changes over time. So if you're a business owner, just create a project for each of your departments. Again, have each of your person responsible for that to be in those departments. Have them update the priorities. So then at any point in time, you can go in and see what their priorities are. And then you can hone in and say, okay, you know what? I agree, I disagree. And that's where you focus your conversation. Because if you are just waiting for meetings to actually be aligned, it's far too late. If by the time you catch up, you realize, everyone's been working on the wrong things. And then lastly, if you're just an individual contributor, what happens is create a project for your goals. Actually, one of the things we're working on is the ability for you to use Party Matrix to help get promotion. So by the way, if you're interested in this last aspect of it, I want to hear from you because we're actually thinking about this on how we can help you specifically get those promotions by using your Party Matrix and leveraging it for meeting your goals. Okay, I do want to mention that the webinar, including this one, will be uploaded and recorded and it's on our website at Affluence/webinars. We also have many other recordings, including email management masterclass around using templates, and then also around team management and so forth. So if you're interested in any of the other webinars, make sure you check out our website there. With that, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the presentation, the demo here, and show you the product and see how we can put this into practice. So here I have my Party Matrix open. As you can see, this is the web app. So what that means is I can access this from any computer. I can be on my Mac, my Windows, on my phone. It doesn't matter. All I have to do is go to affluence.com/PM or partymatrix.com. And when I do open this, the structure of Party Matrix is very, very straightforward. Right in the middle is the 4 quadrants, front and center, every single time, right? So there's no question around that. When you use Party Matrix, we just put that 4 quadrants in front of you for every single one of your projects. So then we make it so it's very visual for you to see what it is you need to work on. On the left-hand side is your list of projects. As I mentioned, your list of projects depends on your use case. If you're an individual contributor, your project should be your personal priorities, your goals for the quarters, your goals for the year, maybe some of the other stuff that you're working on, specific projects that you're responsible for. Those are your projects. If you're a manager, you might have a lot of different projects, but one of them might be a team priorities project, but you might also have one project for each of the coworkers that you work with, right? And then again, if you are a site manager, you might, you have 10 different sites that you look after. You might have 10 projects, one for each of those sites, and then you might have an overall project for some key initiatives and goals that you work on. So in my work account, I have like 300 plus projects. And so Party Matrix is able to help me manage all of those things and still give me valuable insight and be able to help me prioritize no matter the number of projects that you work with. So don't be scared to create more projects. So now front and center is the 4 quadrants. And so now let's just say if I have something I want to do, obviously I want to follow up with webinar participants. Okay, so that's something I have to do. One of the things I can do in Party Matrix is actually I can just say due tomorrow at 2 p.m. and our system will use the natural language to turn that into a due date for me automatically. It's just a really small thing, but it saves me time. And so now when that task is created, the right-hand side is replaced by what's called the item details. With the item details, I have the item name, what the project it belongs, and then below that, I have the owner, which is me right now when I create the task, and then the due date is set for me based on that natural language. And so it uses your local time to set that due date. There's a couple of other things, though, I can add to my item details. For example, I can star the task, which means that this is something that's very important. And so when I star a task, I'll get a special report on it as needed. I can click on Add Icon and choose an icon that might be representative of whatever item that I have. This is optional, but it depends on your use case. For example, if you are in, a specific space where you need to track the status of tasks very, very precisely, then you might want to choose these colors as a way to easily show that something is behind schedule or on schedule, etc. If I need to assign the task to another person, I simply click on the avatar here and assign to another person. And so as you can see, the other person is replaced, their avatar replaces mine, and now they're the owner for the task and I'm a follower. A follower means that I will get updates if this task gets updated, right? So for example, if the task is completed or if the person has a follow-up questions or conversations around the task, then I'll get a notification for it. In my opinion, two of the most important features in Product Matrix is the due dates and reminders. And let me explain why. If we talk about importance and urgency, then we really talk about how we spend our time. And if that's the case, then we need due dates and we need reminders. And so the reason why you want to make sure you set due dates is if we don't set a due date, then our brain will start forgetting about it. And so if you think about, all the things you have to do, one of the things I like to pick on is goal setting. Especially for goals for the new year, for example. So now it's May, and I almost guarantee everybody's forgotten their goal that they set for the beginning of the year, right? Their personal goals. The reason is we set the goal at that point in time, but then we don't have clear dates and deadlines and reminders that we should work on it. And the same thing happens to every single important task that we have, because we have many other things that's competing for our attention. So in my opinion, if you want to use Product Matrix effectively, yes, you use the quadrants as a way to specify priority, but use the due date to specify urgency. So I always set a due date for my most important task. And then after that, I'll set a recurring reminders. So for example, I would say, remind me daily. So now on a daily basis, I'll get a reminder for this task. When I need to follow up with a customer, for example, I will always do due in 1 month, remind me monthly. The difference between reminders and due dates is the following. Due dates will come and go, right? So it'll you have a particular due date, that due date will come, and then hopefully you get the task done. But if you don't, then the due date passes and now it's part of history. And that's when we forget things. And so by setting a reminder, it helps us, first of all, make sure that we work on that task prior to the due date. But then also, if we don't get that task done, Product Matrix will constantly remind us until we mark it as done. So it's a way to trick our brain to overcome this desire to work on the urgent things. So remember how I talked about the urgent things, that last thing first out, right? So what happens is by setting these recurring reminders, it'll constantly pop back up to the top of your list. And in doing so, it forces you to think about it and either mark the task as done or change the due date or reprioritize it as needed. Now below that, you have the chat section. You saw how I actually created a comment right here. I can actually have a whole conversation with my coworker. The purpose of the chat section is to have the conversation be within context. It is so important that you have it within context. Let me give you an example. Let's just say if you use Microsoft Teams and you're chatting with your coworkers around multiple things. It's great because you're having this really fluid conversation. The only problem is 3 months from now, when you look back and you're trying to figure out, hey, what was it that we talked about? What is it that we decided on? Who's supposed to do this and all that? That's the problem, right? When your conversation is fluid and does not fit within the right context, then you don't have a good record of all of those changes. So the chat section within Product Matrix is intended to be a conversation within the context of that task. What's nice about that is that 6 months from now, a year from now, 3 years from now, someone can go and take a look at that chat and still understand exactly what was talked about, who said what, and the due date set and the changes that were made. So it is valuable as a record keeping tool, but it's also as a way to make sure that everyone can stay focused on that specific task. The notes section is where you can add additional metadata around the task. And you can also create subtasks. So for example, follow up with webinar participants, I might have to do a couple things for it. But if you think about the context of your own priorities, think about some of the top things you have to do. You might have, a few subtasks here and there that is part of the requirement for you to fulfill this particular task that you have. And so if you have 3 subtasks, then you mark one as done, then the progress in Protomatrix will update to 33%, for example. The other thing we have, though, is something called Fill with AI. When you click on Fill with AI, our system will go and actually take the task that you have and come up with some details and plan for that particular task. In this particular case, it just gives me some information, but in other cases, Protomatrix will actually generate subtasks for me too. So if you're someone that needs to assign tasks to a lot of other people, all you have to do is type in a very simple task name and then click on the Fill with AI, and our system will create the subtask necessary to fulfill that. And then you can edit it as needed. Finally, in the resources section, that's where you can upload files, documents, links, emails related to this task. Again, it boils down to the right context, right? So if you are you have a task around following up with a client, then you can use the resource section to attach documents or PO or quotes, etc., relevant to that particular client. Not only that, you can use our email integration to actually convert any client's email into a task or attach an email to an existing task. What that means is you have one central place to track all of this information. So let me give you an example. Let's just say, again, if you're someone who's managing multiple sites, within those multiple sites, they have a series of tasks. Within each of those tasks, you might have different people responsible for it. But you might also need to attach like screenshot. Let's say you have an issue on the ground floor at a particular location. Then someone can actually go and create a task and snap a picture on their phone, and that gets synced up into the resources section. Then you can take that and assign it to somebody else. And now you have one central place to ensure that people are actually getting their things done. And if they don't get it done, the task remains open. And the moment the task gets finished, then Protomatrix will update this and say that this task was finished within 14 hours and 30 minutes, right? And so it's a way to ensure that everyone stays accountable. And the best way to do that is to make sure that you set those due dates, make sure that you actually assign it to the appropriate people and assign it to the right quadrants. That's the item details. So now let's talk about how do we create different types of projects, since we say how you should have projects for each of your initiatives and so forth. The way it works is you click on this project and then you choose create project here. And when you go to create project, you have several different options. The first is a blank project. That's very, very straightforward. When you create a blank project, it just creates an empty matrix with nothing in it. The second is the ability to use what's called public templates. So in public templates, these are various templates that we've created over the years, and it's just a way for you to use some of the things that we've seen to be useful. For example, 30, 60, 90-day plan, right? Or the weekly status report templates or our SMART goals template. And so what it does is it actually changes the quadrant names to reflect different ways of using Protomatrix. As you use Protomatrix more, you're going to find that you're not going to have just 5 projects. You're going to have 50. And so what that means is that Protomatrix is flexible enough to let you go and track all sorts of other work that you might have as a one central place to have all of your priorities. And so that's public templates. But you can also create your own templates. So what happens is, imagine if you have a very specific employee or client onboarding process. What you can do in Protomatrix is create a Protomatrix, create all those tasks, set all those due dates, save that as a template, and then when you create you have a new employee or a new client, instead of actually creating all of that over and over again, you just choose from the template, Party Matrix will replicate all of those tasks for you and automatically set all those due dates for you from a specific day that you choose. So what that means is on day 1, your employee needs to do this. On day 5, your employee needs to do this. And on day 30, they need to do this. And so Party Matrix help you save so much time and effort tracking all of those priorities and ensuring that everyone knows exactly what they need to do. So as you use Party Matrix more, check out this template section. When you use that, I think you'll find how you can save a lot of effort. And then lastly, we have what's called Create with AI. Again, one of the things we want to do is we want to help save you time, right? And so here you might want to type in a goal. So let's just say if you're in operations, you might want to improve your operation efficiency by 20%. Or let's say if you're in sales, you want to brainstorm some ways to reach out to more customer. Or if you're a small business owner, maybe you want to figure out what are some ways that you can improve your process, et cetera. So you just type in your goal here, click next, and Party Matrix will actually generate a matrix along with a series of tasks for you. And so this is something that I recommend that you guys try right after this call. It's one of those things where we're constantly improving. And then most importantly, we want to make it work for you in particular. And so if you're able to become more efficient and more effective with some of these capabilities, then it's worth it, worth a shot, right? And if I choose a blank project, you can see how I can choose my project name. I can choose what the naming convention, right? Again, SWOT analysis or basic Eisenhower matrix, and then I can choose a color. The idea with color is to make it visual. It doesn't actually impact anything in particular, but when you look at your list of matrices, then you can see, you know, maybe all the blue ones are related to marketing, all the yellow ones are related to engineering, et cetera. So it's just a way to help us see some visual cues. Okay, let's go back to my list of projects here. I want to choose a project that actually has a little bit more detail. So for example, let's see here. I'm going to go and choose this project. And so as you can see, I'm actually choosing another project here with a little bit more task. Inside Party Matrix, when I select a project on the right-hand side, I have the project details. So the project details allows me to change the project. I can star a project. When I star a project, it pops to the top of my list here. It makes it easier for me to jump to that project. Then I can invite the appropriate team members. So if you're a manager, you want to create a team priority project, then invite your team members to it so they can have that full visibility. Then when you're in that team meeting, just project this onto the big screen. You have your conversation. If you need to update your priorities, go ahead and update the priorities, add new items as needed. When everyone goes back to their desk, they can open up their Party Matrix, open up the project, and see exactly what everyone else has been looking at and be exactly aligned. And that's the goal, right? You don't have to have a meeting to have alignment. You can just open up Party Matrix and look at the project. And I think that is a very valuable thing to do, be able to be on top of things asynchronously in fewer meetings. Below that, you can actually change the name of the quadrant. So everything is actually customizable. So despite us emphasizing around the Eisenhower matrix, the do now, do later, in reality, you can actually adapt Party Matrix to your specific needs. Some people actually don't like the delegate quadrant, for example, because, you know, maybe they don't delegate, so instead they change it to resources. And so that's where you can upload documents or files or anything else that's relevant. And then down here in quadrant 4, obviously you can use as inbox, but you can also change it to whatever else that you need. And then if you click on each of these quadrants, you can change the color as well. And earlier I mentioned how you can create templates. This is something that you can explore on your own later, but if you click on the top right here, you'll get a lot of other choices on how you can update your project. So for example, you can save it as template, but you can also export as CSV, import from CSV, or share the project in read-only mode. Now the quadrants is front and center, but in reality, at the end of the day, it's just data that's visualized in a specific way, right? So what that means is that you can actually look at your Party Matrix in other views. For example, the list view is a way for you to see all your tasks, but you can go in here and sort them by due dates or by modified or by icons. So if you have a lot of tasks, then sometimes you actually want to filter that task and actually see it in a list form, so then you can print it or export it as needed. One of the things that I like the list view for is a way for me to see tasks that are overdue. And so because I can sort it, I can more quickly jump to those tasks, reprioritize, or change the due date as needed. And then there's the calendar view. And so the calendar view takes tasks that have due dates and show them on a calendar, and you can click on each task and modify them or drag and drop them as needed. And then you have the Gantt chart view, which takes the task and look at the dependencies that you may have created in the resources section and allowing you to build a Gantt chart that you can, print or put in your report to your executive team. And then lastly, there's the report section too, where the report section takes the information that you have for this particular project and generate a report for you, especially, if you're a manager and you're spending a lot of time just wondering, hey, are we working on the right things? What are the trajectory of the work that we have? All of that is available. But here's the thing I want to mention. You didn't need any of those other views. In reality, where you should start today is just the 4 quadrants. Use the quadrant as a way to prioritize your task. Use the due dates and the reminders. Assign it to the appropriate people, and that's pretty much it. All the other views and all the other reports and so forth, it's always there when you need it, but it is not a requirement to use Protomatrix. So in my opinion, one of the things I always want to emphasize to customers is that focus on the most high impact features. And those are the ones that I just mentioned, using the quadrants to prioritize, setting the due dates, and then assign it to the appropriate people. Let's switch gear a little bit and talk about email management. So if you use Outlook, our email integration is awesome. So let me show you how it works. What happens is, let's just say you're in Outlook and you get a customer email. And let's say you need to assign to somebody, or let's say it's a very important email and you need to respond to it, but you can't respond to it at this moment. So you want to make sure that you track it though. What do you do today? Likely, you probably just flag the email and then leave it as unread, right? I'm sure you do this. I still do it sometimes. The only problem with that approach is if you have 5 unread emails and 5 flag emails, that's okay. But what happens if you have 50 flag emails or 50 unread emails? Then guess what? You're back to that urgent. The last email that comes in is the first email you respond to. So then when you start your day, that very, very important email starts falling further and further down the list. And now suddenly you're never going to get to it. And then 2 weeks later, you realize that, oh, wait a minute, I never responded to that email. So the way it works with Protomatrix is the following. You can actually open your Outlook. You can go to apps here and then click on add apps and search for Protomatrix, turn email into tasks. That's our integrations for Outlook in particular. And when I click on that option, I have 2 choices. I have the ability to open Protomatrix or prioritize email. So I'll go ahead and click prioritize email. What this allows me to do is take that email, create a task directly from it. I can actually choose what quadrant it goes in. Okay, so for example, let's just say my goals for 2024, and then I can choose what the quadrant 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then not only that, I can assign it to a person directly from here and set a due date. So imagine if you just receive a very important email, you want to make sure that you don't drop this email, right? Instead of just forwarding the email, instead of just flagging the email, you actually organize it into the appropriate place immediately at that point in time, and then send it a due date. And now you'll get a reminder from Protomatrix that you got to answer this particular email. So now if I click capture email, you can see that the right-hand side here looks just like my item details that you saw in the web application. Down here in the comments, I can say remind everyone weekly, right? And now I've just set a weekly reminder to make sure that I don't drop this email. So there's no other service that allows you to do something like this. And then not only that, what you can do is you can take an email and attach it to an existing task. Again, this is a unique Protomatrix feature I haven't seen anywhere else, honestly. What happens is if you have multiple emails from a customer and you need to have it consolidated in one central place, you can open Protomatrix, search for the item name, and then just click attach. So what that does is it takes an email and attaches it to an existing task. And now within that task, you might have everything from purchase order, agreements, documents, PowerPoints, emails, all one central place. And when someone else takes over that task, they have full visibility on what it is that they need to do, and there's full context. So the worst thing you could do is forward that email to another person, and then 6 months from now, there's no record of any of this. That person may no longer be at your company, or someone else needs to take over and they don't have the full context of the email because there's all these other conversations and it's impossible to keep track. And so by using Protomatrix, you actually have it in one sensible place, and it's just a lot more powerful and easier to keep track of all of that. So that's how our email integration works. One of the neat thing about Protomatrix is that every single person, all of you, actually have a unique inbox address. So let me show you how that works. So here, if I go to inbox, what I can do is I can actually copy my inbox address. And I save this inbox address on my phone as a contact, and I call it Protomatrix inbox. So then I call it inbox Protomatrix, actually. What happens is that when I'm on the road, and I get an email that's important, right? And I'm on Apple Mail, so I don't have the Outlook extension. I can actually just forward it into Protomatrix. And so what happens is instead of actually using the integration here, so now imagine if you're on the phone, you can actually forward it to Protomatrix. So I click forward, right? And I do inbox Protomatrix. And then I have the whole content of the email, but now in the body of the email, I can do the following. I can say due tomorrow, remind me daily. So now I can turn an email into a task in Protomatrix and use the command system directly from the email that I forward. In fact, I could even do assign to, and then I can type the person's email, my coworker's email, and now it assigns a task to them, set the due date, and remind them daily. It is super powerful. You can build rules around this. So if you're extremely sophisticated, you can actually build rules so then all specific customers' emails will go into specific projects automatically. So Protomatrix lets you do all of those things. Now, the last thing I want to mention is actually Microsoft Teams integration. So if you use Microsoft Teams, you can certainly install Protomatrix for Teams. Once you do, right-click on here and pin it. If you click on Teams, you can see how everything looks exactly the same as your web application. There's just a couple of minor changes, which is up here, where the project is or the menu is. And then you still have the home view. This is where you'll get alerts and notifications of the important changes that you have. So if you're using Protomatrix personally, then the alert section is where you get those reminders and due dates. But if you use Protomatrix with the team, this is where you get notifications when you're assigned a task or someone updates a task. And then afterwards, you also have, you're able to go to other views such as the agenda, where you can actually see all the tasks that's coming up. And then you can go to click on my items, which is a way for you to see all the tasks you have across your entire Protomatrix. So if you have one project, that's easy to manage, right? But if you have 10 projects, my item is a place where you can go and see all the tasks that you have across all of your projects in one central place. One last thing I want to show you inside Teams that's really useful is the ability to use the one-on-one view. So if you go to a coworker and select that person, you can have this one-on-one view. And what it does, it shows all the tasks you have in common with that person across your entire Protomatrix. So imagine if you're a manager and you have a couple of direct reports, you can go to this view here, see all the tasks that they have across all the different projects. And then you can actually create shared tasks directly from here. So when you have that one-on-one conversation or one-on-one meeting, you can hone in and talk about the specific tasks or action items that's overdue without having to go to Protomatrix, without having to click down every single project, right? This will save you a lot of time and make your one-on-one meetings a lot more effective. Okay, with that, I'm going to pause and I'm going to go back to my presentation and wrap things up. I do want to mention that Protomatrix actually integrates with so many other things as well. So for example, if you use Microsoft Edge, you can actually install Protomatrix for Edge. We also have Protomatrix for Chrome. We also have what's called connectors, which means allowing you to pull in Planner, To-Do, and so forth. And then also we have integrations with Gmail, but then here, we have help pages that explains the various commands that you can use. Okay, I'm going to jump back to my presentation. So now it's up to you. It's on you to, one, sign up for Protomatrix if you haven't already. Use our apps in Teams and Outlook if applicable. Create at least 3 projects: personal priorities, shared team priorities, key initiative. Invite the team members wherever appropriate and pitch to them why it's important to focus on high impact tasks. I think the easiest thing that we can do, that you can do, is to create those shared priority list. So then when you're in meetings or when you're having conversation, you have something tangible to talk about. When you create items, make sure you set due dates. Make sure you set those reminders. I want to emphasize that over and over again, and put them in the appropriate quadrants. And then when you are finished with those tasks, mark those tasks as done. And then lastly, ruthlessly prioritize. That's just a personal thing that I recommend. It doesn't matter what software you use, whether you use Protomatrix or anything else. If you don't prioritize your time, someone else will. So when you use Protomatrix, it forces you to do that prioritization, forces you to make that hard decision up front. So take advantage of that and make sure that your Protomatrix is always updated. Couple of advice. At the start, you can use Protomatrix to track higher impact tasks. So for example, you might not want to use Protomatrix at the beginning to track simple to-do list, right? There's many other ways to do that. Instead, only track the things where you can make a conscious decision on deciding the priority level. Protomatrix is a communication tool, and I want to emphasize that again and again. It's a way for everyone to have alignment and make sure that you're on the same page. And then lastly, use Protomatrix to manage your individual goals. You are the most important person in all of this. And so make sure that you're on the same page and make sure that you are successful. And if you're successful, then everything else will fall into place. What success with Protomatrix should look like on a personal level, you should check Protomatrix at least weekly basis to remind yourself of your goals. For me, I have a project on my goals and I always look at it just to remind myself. You using it at one central place to track all your priorities. And then at the team level, make sure that everyone understands and are aligned on key tasks. If anyone ever has a question on what is our priority, they should be able to open up Protomatrix and look. And if you're doing that, and if your team members are doing that, then you're using Protomatrix correctly. And then lastly, if you have a lot of important emails and you're finding that you're struggling with email prioritization, then make sure that you use our Outlook integration to prioritize your email and triage it as needed.